Good evening, welcome to Ben TV. My name is Steve Pereira and you're watching Quedia, where we explore all things art, culture, media. Tonight we've got a very interesting guest. Meet Bill Calder. Those of you might know him. He's one of the publishing icons in Melbourne. He was a previous editor of Brother Sister and more recently BNews. Bill's more recent claim to fame is he's the author of this brand new book on gay and lesbian publications. Welcome, Bill, to Ben TV.
Thank you, Steve.
This is a very exciting, aside from the cover, the picture of Queen Victoria with a pink nose.
It's a very colourful cover.
It is a very colourful cover. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, it covers the period of when print media first appeared in Australia, gay print media, which didn't occur until pretty much 1970. So the book actually covers the beginnings of that media right through to early this century when print started to decline as the key media and increasingly, as I think we all are aware, the internet took over.
Now, in that first phase, is that what you call the liberationist phase?
Yeah, the very first publishers were what I would call liberationist. And what triggered the first publication, which was known as Camp Inc., was actually the Stonewall riots in New York, which got mainstream coverage in Australia. And two people, John Ware and Christabel Pole, were sitting around together drinking a bottle of whiskey, and they decided, we're going to do something here in Australia.
So what years were that when?
This was 1970. And
so right at Stonewall.
A year after. It was actually the coverage of the 12-month commemoratory marches in America that triggered them. So it took kind of a year to trigger action in Australia. But when it got triggered, a lot happened. They set up the organisation CAMP, which was Campaign Against Moral Persecution, obviously using the cute name of CAMP, and set up, even before they started the organisation, they put out an edition of Camp Inc., which was the first magazine, gay or lesbian magazine in Australia.
And how did they circulate it?
It was a membership publication. So people joined the organisation, and as part of a membership you got the magazine, which seems an odd way of publicising it, but the organisation did extremely well. It got up to 5,000 copies being printed, most of them being members. But John Ware also kind of refers to it as our voice to the outside world, and he was very keen on sending that magazine out to sympathetic journalists, to government people in the government and the medical profession.
So was there any entertainment involved with that? Was it largely socio-political magazine?
Yeah, well, look, I should perhaps define what liberationist is. Liberationist it's kind of it's a gay rights movement, if you like, but it's set particularly in the 70s, and it comes out of a thinking that the entire world needs to be reformed. In its extreme case, capitalism needs to be overthrown, and the patriarchy and monogamy and religion, all the institutions of the time were kind of under challenge. And so the gay liberationists were connected to sort of broader movements, a general sort of left movements, black rights movements, feminist movements.
Can I just ask, because with Stonewall itself, there was a real schism between what became the conservative gay movement and then the more radical gay movement, who wanted a more radical restructuring of society. Whereas the conservative just wanted more recognition for gay and lesbian rights.
Yeah.
And so you had the Fruits and Suits, who were opposed to the hippies and the other more radical activists.
And they were certainly there in Australia
as well.
But they, and the book talks about it, they come out and start producing magazines as well.
So where did this magazine fit in that political spectrum? Was it?
This was very much, well, Camp Inc. was a liberationist magazine.
Very lefty.
Yes and no. It had a smorgasbord of political viewpoints, but it certainly attracted the left. We're in that organisation. John Ware himself was more a counterculturalist. he wasn't particularly part of any left program. So it was really an umbrella group for a lot of things, but it was certainly not your bar scene or your. I mean, they were against putting male nudes generally in their magazines, so they'd adopted the broad feminist perspective on pornography and nudity.
But this was still largely male-focused, though.
It endeavoured to be both male and female, but it was dominated by men, which in itself triggered the lesbian media that broke away from both the women's movements and the gay movements. That had, I mean, originally both men and women tried to coexist in these organisations, but, you know, the early 70s was still a time of fairly overt sexism, but also very different viewpoints on sex between men and women. Men were much more interested in free expression of sexual desire.
So how long does the liberationist period last for, then, in your...
Look, really it was short-lived in Australia. It was in decline by the mid-70s. The political climate in Australia had swung to the right. The sort of glorious dreams of new society that perhaps in Australia to some extent Whitlam, who was the Prime Minister in the early 70s, perhaps symbolised. That optimism and enthusiasm had sort of fallen apart by the mid-70s. The global economy had collapsed. The right was surging back, saying, "We told you so." And so a lot of those sort of left-wing dreams of a new society had gone.
Sorry, we're just running out of time. So if there's one way you'd characterise the spirit of the liberationists, what word will you use to characterise it? Political, politicised?
They wanted to transform, I think, transform both society...
So very much about social change?
Yeah, and individual change. So both social transformation and individual transformation.
Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We've been talking to Bill Calder, the author of this brand new exciting publication, Pink Ink, A History of Gay Publications in Australia, Melbourne specifically. Thank you for watching. You've been watching with Ben TV.